Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. I'm your host, James Gardner, certified athletic therapist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, yoga instructor, human being. This platform, for the pros, by the pros, anybody in the performance space, and beyond. Welcome here to share in the stories of professionals, experiences, journeys, learning along the way. It's a platform to connect, to network, and to be a part of a community that cares, with conversations that matter, experiences that resonate, and generate ideas, thought-provoking, organic dialogue, passionate pros. Brought to you as always by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, and Benchmark Athletics, in association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. It's First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being a part of it.
Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy roundtable brought to you by First Star Therapy. I'm your host, James Gardner, and this is a platform for the pros, by the pros. Passionate pros, organic dialogue. Let's chat. Thanks for listening. Let's roll.
All right, here we go. Part 2 of 3, Women in Sports. First Star Let's Chat, brought to you as always by First Star Therapy, our primary sponsor, Mobility Tape, and their newest product, Mobility Tape for Her. Alex Paletto is here to introduce that product. Brianne Jenner is back as our host for today. I'll fade into the background and she will introduce Emily Fulton as we get into this and have that discussion. But here we go. First session was really successful. A discussion that needs to happen. This one definitely needs to happen. Been looking forward to this all the way through. So as a spokesperson and advocate for Mobility Tape for Her, Alex Paletto, former Colorado State University USC volleyball athlete, currently playing in the National Beach program here for Canada. Product launched last week. You're the spokesperson. How are things going? Tell us a little bit about the product and we'll jump into this one.
Things are going great. So yeah, we launched April 1st, so officially 1 week old. And our goal at Mobility Tape for Her is to provide a better healthcare outcome for women. So what is Mobility Tape? We are the only kinesiology tape with heat activation technology. So when it is applied to your skin, it releases the analgesic compounds built into the adhesive into your tissue, creating this icy hot sensation, which then decreases pain and inflammation. So by using this tape on your lower abdomen and your back during menstruation, we can help alleviate period pain and cramps. Additionally, the tape can be used for all different types of pain, including headaches, muscle and joint pain, strains, and other injuries. So essentially, our mission is to help women have the option to use less pharmaceuticals and be more informed about their bodies, what's going in them, and how they're treating them. If there's any more questions or comments about what we're doing, please check out our social media at Mobility Tape for Her, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, all the same. And that's all I have for you. Back to you, James.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the endorsement and showcasing that product. Obviously, Mobility Tape has been our primary sponsor through this platform. Mobility Tape for Her launched last week. An amazing product and amazing feedback. Some good social media stuff going on there to advocate for it and with it, and hopefully into more hands and onto more bodies, and away we go. Our secondary sponsors are Benchmark Athletics and Epic. That's EPOCH, brought to you in association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. Here we go. Brianne Jenner will play host again today. She is a Hockey Canada athlete and began her national women's team career in 2009. Her achievements include playing for Canada at 7 World Championships and earning Olympic gold and silver medals. She's currently an assistant captain with the team. She studied at Cornell University, as well as earning her Master's of Public Policy from the University of Calgary. Brienne is a founding board member of the PWHPA. She is currently prepping for the 2021 IIHF Women's World Championship in Halifax and Truro, Nova Scotia. The puck drops May 6th with Canada taking on Finland in its opener at the Scotiabank Centre out there. Her handle at bjenner19 on Instagram. Reach out, connect, get connected to the PWHPA, get connected with Brienne and all the things that they're doing. Amazing stuff happening. Brienne will play host to, as I just learned, a former teammate, and not just teammate, but line mate, Emily Fulton. Emily is a registered dietitian and sports nutritionist, having completed her dietetic training at Ryerson University while obtaining her Master of Health Science in Nutrition Communication. Prior to starting her MHSc at Ryerson, she received a bachelor's degree in Nutritional Sciences from Cornell University. Excuse me, while also playing with the varsity women's hockey team all 4 years, winning multiple ECAC and Ivy League championships and competing in the Frozen Four. Part of her hockey career was also spent with Hockey Canada's national women's program and 4 years professionally with the Toronto Furies in the CWHL. With a food-first approach and appreciation for individual food preferences, Emily is enthusiastic to work with clients to create personalized nutrition care plans to fuel their specific lifestyle. She works with individuals on building a relationship with food, one they will enjoy and feel energized by. Emily is able to assist individuals with nutrition to optimize athletic performance and an active lifestyle, chronic pain and inflammation, weight management, disease prevention, and achieving their optimal health through food and nutrition. She's also a certified strength and conditioning specialist by the NSCA and has worked with collegiate, national team, and everyday individuals towards their health and fitness goals. In her personal time, she loves staying active, going for hikes with her dog Bentley, and playing all sorts of sports, including golf, hockey, slow pitch, basketball, and many, many more. An amazing bio. I will let the two of you get after this. Teammates, friends, former line mates. This will be a great one to listen to. Appreciate you being here. For everybody who is here live, who is picking up the podcast version of this after the fact, it goes such a long way. Having these conversations, having an audience, having a platform. Brienne, I'll throw it over to you, and Emily, guys, take it away.
Thank you so much, James. I'm really excited for this conversation. You know, Emily and I had a lot of chemistry on the ice. We're going to find out if we have chemistry in a podcast setting, but I'm hoping we do. I use Emily a lot as a resource, as someone that's a friend. So I'm really excited that I can kind of share that opportunity with everyone tuning into the podcast today, because as you mentioned in Emily's bio, she's studying sports nutrition. She's a registered dietitian. She has all these tools that I think will be really helpful for all of us on this call. Just to start us off, what made you want to get into sports nutrition?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bree. I think that's a great place to start. As far as sports nutrition, as you heard, I had quite an extensive career playing hockey, and I remember I was actually at a national team camp, and it was the first time I had been exposed to a registered dietitian, and just sitting there in that classroom and learning all the ways that we can utilize food, something that's around us every single day, how we can use that to better our performance. That's what really kind of pulled me in. And I didn't realize right away that I wanted to be a dietitian, but understanding how food could help me, whether it be in the gym, on the ice, away from the rink, was something that really excited me. And it led me to study nutrition at Cornell. Ideally, like many, I guess, people who have a love for science, they go in thinking they want to go to med school. That did not happen, to say the least. But within there, I did a internship, you could say, with Clint Wattenberg, who is actually now at the UFC Performance Center, but he was the registered dietitian at Cornell, working with the athletes there. And I did an internship with him for a year there and worked with some of the athletes and how we can provide information sessions or education, or how we can even find better ways to fuel our body on campus, which many people know that can be very, very challenging for university athletes. But it was through that time I spent with him that I just realized I want to be a dietitian. I love food, who doesn't? But how can I use that and put it with my other love of sport and activity? And here I am, a dietitian years later, and absolutely loving it. I love my job. I love working with individuals and athletes in particular. I think they're just a special breed of people who are driven in different ways to better, I guess, their overall health, but also that performance they have in whatever sport they may play.
That's interesting. Clint Wattenberg was the first dietitian that I sort of spoke to when I was diagnosed with celiac disease, and I had to redo all of my nutrition. I didn't know he was at UFC Sport Performance Institute now. That's really interesting. So last week, I mean, in our part 1 of Women in Sports series, we talked with Kristen a lot about the menstrual cycle and its importance to athletic performance. And it was really cool. We learned that the cycle kind of functions as a litmus test for how female bodies are functioning. And a big contributing factor that we talked about was underfueling. And it's kind of perfect timing that we have you on this week. And we have an opportunity to kind of dive into this topic. So can you talk about your experience working with young female athletes? How common is underfueling?
Yeah, you know what? I listened to that podcast and I thought Kristen touched great on this, and it's such an important topic that needs to be addressed. And it really does take a team approach as far as the athlete themselves, the coach, and then whether it's the physiotherapist, athletic therapist, the dietitian, everyone coming together. So, you know, it's more common than we probably realize. And 2, it's thought to be normal by many, many athletes. And I remember working with a women's hockey team, and I just did a survey at one of my the start of one of my presentations, and it was kind of like my question was, do you think it's normal to miss your period? And I think 80% of the players said yes, it's normal. So that was quite alarming to me. But again, it's that opportunity for education and just explaining to them what it means when you're missing that menstrual cycle. And while we talk about kind of the female athlete triad that Kristen touched on, too, looking to what we call REDS, which is relative energy deficiency in sport, meaning that we don't have enough energy, that low energy availability that you talk about. And that could either be from underfueling, so we're not eating enough, we're not getting the right nutrition, or it could be from overtraining, or a combination of both. And, you know, sometimes these can happen both intentionally from an athlete perspective or unintentionally. I think when we look at it intentionally, we have maybe those athletes who are competing in weight class sports. So I think of like wrestling, even rowing, like boxing, those types of ones. So are they intentionally cutting back on calories or nutrition to achieve that weight so that they can compete there? The other way I see it, and this could be a combination of that intentional, unintentional, is athletes who are maybe trying to lose weight, or like we kind of say, like a lean out, and they're just not sure how to do it. So they just start eating less throughout the day or at certain times of the day in hopes of kind of changing that body composition. And when it comes to this intentional underfueling, you know, it's not meant for our bodies to be in that year round. There may be times when we do want to kind of cut back on fueling, but we can touch on that a little bit later when it gets to certain weight class sports and kind of the risks with it and who you want to work with. From an unintentional perspective, you know, I think just athletes not being aware that they aren't eating enough to support their training. And I think especially now we're in that day and age where as a young athlete growing up, you're expected to be like in camps year round. You're expected to, like, if you're a hockey player, expected to be on the ice and then off the ice and then doing like a million different things. So we're asking like so much of these athletes. So it can just lead to too much activity and not enough fuel to support that activity. I think unintentionally too, it also comes with that outside influence. And for me, I think of social media. I think that's something that's around us. I think, you know, it's something we can't get away from. It's very beneficial for certain things, but too, we want to just be aware of the risks with that. And that could be, are we seeing, you know, different like diets that are trending, or like celery juice coming in and out, or finding things like that. And then that idea of what a female athlete's body should look like. And I think with that, it can get very confusing for athletes alike, because they have this idea of what society thinks an athlete should look like. And without meaning to, sometimes, athletes are driven to be the best. And if they see someone doing the best at something, they too want to do that. And it's like, how can I clean up my training? How can I clean up my eating? And sometimes this leads to underfueling, not having enough to eat, not having enough for training. But if we speak to that menstruation and REDS, it's our body starts to shut down. So we start to preserve energy. So when we're not eating enough, we're going to prioritize our heart and brain health over our menstrual cycle. So essentially the body doesn't have enough energy to continue. So, hey, I'm going to shut down my reproductive health. We also see it kind of shutting down. We might have some thyroid issues. So metabolism can kind of fluctuate. Two, we see even our mental health. We may not feel right. We may just feel off. We're a little bit moody, a little bit irritable, and we're just not sure why. And I think that's a big thing that we can take as teammates, as practitioners, and just fans of the game. If an athlete's saying, you know what, I don't feel myself, I don't feel right, something's going on. From my perspective, I want to look at, are they eating enough? And going from there and building back to fueling at the appropriate amount.
It reminds me of that Snickers commercial where someone's like really grumpy and like, are you hungry? I feel like you need a snack. I don't know how easy that would be to have that conversation with teammates, but it's interesting to know that is sort of a symptom that you can recognize. There was a lot of information there. I want to go back to what you said about intentional versus unintentional. The unintentional, right? Where we have athletes that are, want to maximize their training, trying to do their best. What are some of the traps that they're falling into? Is it timing? Is it lack of planning? Is it just not knowing the right things to eat?
Yeah, I think it's probably a combination of all those things. And for each athlete, it's going to be different. So tackling it as a group, it's being aware of knowing when things don't feel right. And then kind of going to the basics of sports nutrition. And for me, my basics, I always like to say, eat every 3 to 4 hours. And some athletes are like, yeah, eat every 3 to 4 minutes. But within that 3 to 4 hours, can you get like a carbohydrate food, a protein food, and then bonus for color? So if we're throwing in like a fruit or vegetable, just because those fruit and vegetables are packed with those antioxidants, they're good for that inflammation, preventing that muscle soreness after, and then too, just for general health. They're also good for that. But, I think some traps that we tend to fall into as athletes, and particularly as female athletes, is this idea of what a female athlete is supposed to look like. And, we can't entirely blame social media. I don't think there's one person or thing to point our finger at, but it's a combination of, this is what we see on Instagram of what a female athlete should look like. She's got a 6-pack, like traps are bulging, like quads are just like tree trunks per se. Or we have the opposite, depending on the sport. Are they like a little bit leaner? Do they maybe not have those big quads, but they're defined? Or do we see, athletes on TV? And I think too of certain sports where, hockey, they're covered in equipment. We don't see them. But if you think of like a beach volleyball player, a runner, track athletes, then, I think as media, we start to kind of break down how an athlete should look. And I think that can get a little cloudy for young athletes, and not just young athletes, I think female athletes of all ages. And how do we then start to change the way we eat to make our body look that way? And I see that too with, certain diets will be like, oh, this athlete, she looks absolutely jacked. She's finishing like she's top on the team, top on whatever event they're playing in. Okay, how are they eating? Are they eating like plant-based? Are they doing like a carnivore diet? And then we start to model our diet or nutrition after that. And you know what? It's not meant for everyone. It's the shoe doesn't fit for everyone. I think everyone has to take an individualized approach. But there's certain things that we fall into, and it's understanding too that just because an athlete looks that way doesn't mean they're super powerful. They have the endurance. They're able to shoot like the basketball into the net every like 9 out of 10 free throws. Like, so I think stepping back and understanding what's best for myself. And I know, Bree, this, playing on team with 20 other individuals, everyone's different and everyone competes their best at a different body weight, a different body composition. And not everyone's meant to be the exact same.
Yeah, that's a really unique lesson that I think I've been lucky to learn by being in a sport like hockey, where I have like 23 other teammates, all different body types, all kind of needing to compete, like you said, at different weights, to get through a tough season. And it's interesting, I still, as someone who's kind of paid attention to this for the last, decade and being in high performance sport, I rarely see an example of a female athletic body in the media, let alone social media, like in classic media, that actually represents what a lot of myself and my peers look like, right? There's this idea that you can't have any kind of fat on your body, when the reality, at least for a lot of hockey players, is you need that to kind of get through a season. So it's interesting. And I think, when you're younger, you put a lot more weight into that. You think that's how I'm expected to look. And it's funny, like you said, the images are someone that's extremely jacked, or you see skinny fit, right? You see skinny fit a lot, like on the cover of like Women's Health magazine, you'll see like, something advertising a weight workout and the person has no muscle on them. So it's funny. I've never really, seen athletes that look like myself represented in media. And I think I recognize that, but it's really important to have these conversations, I think, so young female athletes can hear that and see that there's no one way to look.
Yeah. And what comes to mind is the Sports Illustrated that they did like a few years back of like athlete bodies, and they did like such a variety of different body types from different sports, and it was the one where they were essentially nude, and you got to see the athlete, just like the skeleton of them taken away from their sport, and every single one of them was different. Some had muscle, some had more muscle, some had less. And I think for female athletes, we are starting to see a little bit of a shift to, where muscle is sexy, if we want to say it that way. And having muscle isn't a bad thing. And having a little bit of body fat is totally normal. And I think the more we continue to talk about it being normal, and the more we present it, and having role models in different sports presenting it that way, is the younger athletes or even teammates we'll start to see that, hey, it's completely normal and everyone's body's different, but how do you compete at your best? And sometimes we're not able to figure that out by ourselves. And that's when you kind of tap into the resources you have and have those uncomfortable conversations that might be uncomfortable for some, and figure out, I don't know what I'm supposed to look like, but hey, that's okay, because I'm going to figure it out along the way.
Absolutely. I want to go back because you brought up weight cut sports, and that's always a tricky one. I find, I'm thankful that I'm not in a situation where I have to have that. Like, that seems like a lot of pressure. If, in a situation like rowing or wrestling, you've got to get to a certain weight in order to compete. And underfueling is probably a tool that they use. Is there a safe way to do that for athletes and coaches that are in those weight-based sports?
Yeah, so definitely there's going to be a period of under fueling, if we want to kind of frame it that way. And again, it's just a period of time, because we're not meant to be at the exact same body composition and weight year round. And I think that's really important for people to understand, that it's going to fluctuate through our training seasons and through our competitive seasons. But for these weight class sports, where our weight does fluctuate, I think we're moving away from that period of when we would see like athletes in full tracksuits, garbage bags, like running down the street, or like sitting in the sauna for hours. And we're moving towards more of, there's kind of like a science and art behind it. And how do we start to cut weight a little bit slower, in a safe way? And how do we know what that safe like weight is that we should be competing at? And I think working with someone who specializes in that area, like a registered dietitian in that area, is really important. Now, I myself don't work with a lot of a weight class or weight cutting athletes. I do have quite a few colleagues that do, but I think it's important to understand that cutting the weight is kind of part one. But part two is, how do we refuel after that weigh-in, and prepare for that competition? Because sometimes it's within 24 hours we get to compete again. And how do we start to like rehydrate our body, making sure that we don't feel like crap in our stomach and our head, but we're fueled for that competition. Again, there is risk. There's risk with everything that we do in sport. And this is one of those with the weight class, but working with a professional who's well-versed and experienced in that area is super, super important.
Okay, I want to turn the page a little bit here. I think we covered a lot when it comes to underfueling, but this is kind of some topics that I think everyone's either Googling or wondering if they see it come up on their newsfeed or Instagram, and that is fad diets. You kind of hit on that a little bit earlier, but we have you here, we have a professional that can kind of give us the real lowdown. I want to get into a few of these. So the first one, intermittent fasting. It's pretty popular. I feel like I know a lot of people, athletes, non-athletes alike, who find it beneficial. Is it beneficial for high performance athletes? And I'm going to add a second question to that. If so, does it differ between male and females?
Yeah, so fad diets, they're everywhere, aren't they? So intermittent fasting, I think for those listeners who maybe aren't sure of what that is, intermittent fasting, essentially we're restricting a period of time where we're not eating, or I guess we restrict the window when we do eat. The most common, I would say, is like an 8-hour window of eating. So maybe it's like 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. is when we're eating. So for that whole other time, we're not fueling our body. We're having water, but nothing really with any nutritional value within that other 16-hour window. There we go. So is it beneficial? I think it depends on your goals. For a regular like average Joe who's maybe just looking to improve their overall health, intermittent fasting has been shown to be effective for like weight loss, improving like cardiometabolic health, like as such as like blood sugar, like cholesterol, blood lipids. It does have a similar effect to just an overall calorie deficit. So if we're just reducing the amount we eat in a day, but it is tricky when it comes to athletes in particular, because, as I said earlier, my general rule is to be fueling every 3 to 4 hours. And that is because our body needs carbohydrates for energy. That's what our brain's primary fuel source is. It's carbohydrates or glucose, to be more specific. And then that consistent protein intake throughout the day helps support our muscle maintenance, but also if we're looking to gain any muscle mass or gain strength or power. So we need that consistent intake. And I think when we look at restrictive eating windows, we need to think about when we're training or when we're competing, and how does this affect it? If we're eating from 11 to 7, but we're training every day from 8 to 11 or 8 to 10 in the morning, you're probably not going to feel very good at the gym. You're going to feel sluggish, low energy. You may even start to feel lightheaded, a little sick to your stomach. So how is it impacting your training? If you can't train at your highest, then you're not going to make those strides or those improvements that you want in the gym, in the pool, on the court. So looking at it in that sense. From a female athlete perspective, and this affects males too, but more important for females, I believe, is we want to think of iron absorption, actually, when we think of intermittent fasting. And the reason being is that iron is a nutrient that is super important for delivering oxygen to our working muscles. So it's key in the production of our red blood cells and overall energy production in the body. And when our iron is low, it can impact our performance. So it reduces that ability to transport oxygen. It can reduce our VO2 max for some of those that understand us, which is essentially like the duration before like fatigue or tiredness sets in. So to get in for my like science nerds who are listening here, there's a hormone called hepcidin. And when that is high, our iron absorption's low. So hepcidin is high. Mostly it's increased with inflammation, which athletes experience chronically. So when we train, overall inflammation increases. So the hormone hepcidin increases. So that means we're absorbing less iron from our food. Now, hepcidin is actually lowest in the morning when we have the least inflammation. So in the morning is that window of opportunity that we can get higher iron foods in, because when that hepcidin's low, we're going to absorb more iron. So if we're missing that fueling opportunity in the morning, we may be more likely to increase the risk of that iron deficiency. And iron's important for females because we have higher requirements, because we tend to lose more through our menstrual cycle. So it's that window of opportunity that we don't want to miss with that intermittent fasting. So again, it's different for everyone, but we just want to, from an athlete perspective, we want to understand the risks we're partaking in when we do follow this type of eating regime.
Okay, that was super valuable. I didn't know that piece about, I'm forgetting the word, hepcidin?
Hepcidin. I hope I'm saying it right. If not, I'm acting like a fool right now, but that's okay.
And iron. I didn't know that piece about kind of the morning and how kind of important that window is. What about keto? What do we think for keto? Are there certain demographics where it can be beneficial?
Yeah, I think keto, again, it has been shown to be beneficial when we think of like that weight loss. And I think sometimes athletes get pulled in because, they have this idea, they just want to look shredded, right? So how can I lose that fat? But with keto or low carb, and I'm going to kind of group those together, they are a little bit different. Keto is less than 50 grams of carbs a day, whereas a low carb, you can eat between like 50 and 150 grams of carbs a day. So I'm just going to group them together.
Okay.
But as far as when we think of athletes, like I said before, carbohydrates is our main source of energy. So if we're reducing the amount that we're intaking, essentially we have less gas in the tank. Our workouts aren't going to be as great. Are we going to be able to compete at our best? There is one place where this lower carb diet may be beneficial for sport, and that's in more of our aerobic sports. So maybe our long distance runners, our marathoners, like a triathlete, or even our longer bikers, or cyclists, I guess I should say. And that's because the low carb may enhance aerobic capacity in the sense that we start to our body kind of switches to utilizing fat for energy. Again, it's very specific to the sport. It's not something you want to do year round. You may do it at a certain phase within your training, but I would caution any of our athletes within that power, that explosive, the anaerobic sports, when you're starting and stopping, to move away from that and include more carbohydrates, because we need that quick energy. And that's what carbohydrates are giving us. We're able to mobilize our carbohydrates or our glycogen stores, our glucose more quickly and more readily, to use that for energy and competition and training.
So for a power-based athlete or any kind of athlete that has that anaerobic burst of speed in their sport, what's the recommendation for like total number of carbs in a day? Is it really kind of individualized?
Yeah, so it's going to be individualized. It's individualized based on sport. So what exactly are we looking like? And then it's individualized based on weight. And that's because we usually recommend about, I would say 5 to 10 grams per kilogram of weight. So again, that looks different. And that too is going to be based around your day, because we still want to include carbs before training, but also after training, because while we're using those up for training or competition, we need to replace everything that we've used, or refuel. I like to refuel the tank there after training. So again, it's individualized, but getting familiar, I think tapping into your own body, like, did I feel energized that game, or that session in the gym, or that session on the track, or and kind of going at it from that perspective as well is important.
So I had never really heard sort of the low carb keto, how it could be used for like long distance endurance. So that's really interesting. But obviously I think it's pretty clear to see how important carbs are for the vast majority of sports. And I'm kind of happy to hear that, because I love my carbs. So that is all good with me. Okay, the last kind of fad diet. I know there's a ton out there, but I had to kind of be selective. Plant-based diet for athletes.
Yeah, I think this is super important. I think it's become even more popular in the last few years with a few documentaries coming out.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess looking at what does plant-based mean? For some people, they may think this means I'm going totally vegan, which means I don't have any animal products at all. For some, it may be vegetarian. I'm just not eating like meats or fish or poultry, but I'm still going to have my milk, my yogurts. Or are we just including more plant-based meals? And this one, it's tricky because, we have athletes who will go on it and they're like, I feel awesome. And I'm like, that's probably because you're eating more fruit and vegetables than you ever would have. So you're getting like more nutrients in, you're getting like fiber in, you're getting all these things that are good for your health, good for your brain, good for your skin, everything. So yeah, you're going to feel better. You're eating good things. From an athlete fueling perspective, I'm totally like, if I have an athlete that comes to me and says they want to do plant-based and whatever reason, I'll just, why? Tell me what you know about it. I just want to make sure that they're still going to meet their basic energy needs and then their increased needs as an athlete. So I want to make sure they're not underfueling, because we have a tendency to underfuel when we do more plant-based, and that's just because the foods aren't as energy dense. So we want to make sure we're eating enough to get our energy needs. And this can be a little bit tricky because, when we're eating like a cup of beans packed with fiber, you're going to feel more full. But I mean, you're also going to feel a little bit gassy at first because you're getting used to that. But how do we like still meet those demands throughout? And then with plant-based, we want to be careful too with just that iron that I touched on before, and we're getting enough in our diet. There's two different types of iron. There's heme and non-heme iron. So one is animal based, one is plant-based. And unfortunately, our body doesn't absorb plant-based iron as well as it absorbs animal-based iron. So we have to eat a lot more of it. There is some kind of tricks to the trade, and that's like including iron with our vitamin C rich foods. So for example, if like pumpkin seeds are high in iron, can we top those with some like strawberries, some berries, which are high in vitamin C, to just increase the amount of iron we absorb from the food? And then kind of avoiding some of the things that may impact iron absorption, which is coffee for one. So which sucks for me because I started taking my iron pill. I had low iron. and I started taking it in the morning, but then I had to switch my coffee routine up, which totally threw me for a loop because I'm a big coffee advocate. But just watching these things, and I think that's where working with a professional is important, because nutrients don't work independently. They all work together within our body. And I think that's why we can't focus on one overall. But sorry, went off on a little tangent. I tend to do that, but back to our plant-based. The other thing I want to caution with plant-based is, from a performance perspective, is that we tend to miss one other key nutrient, and that's creatine. So some of you may have heard this. It's very commonly known in like a supplement form, but we get creatine from foods, but it comes from animal products. And creatine is responsible for like muscle contractions, more importantly, explosive or power contractions. So, are we jumping? Are we like doing a power clean? Are we like jumping up to the net to spike? Are we taking a slap shot? Anything like that, anything where it's quick and poppy, we're using creatine. When we do plant-based, we're not getting that creatine from our diet. So, we may start to feel a little bit more sluggish, not as quick as usual. So with my athletes, what I'll ask them, and it kind of goes with how they're feeling, is one, can we maybe include some sort of animal protein, like once or twice a week, whether that be like a salmon, a fish, or chicken? If not, how do they feel about supplementing with creatine? Just so that we're still reaching those nutrient needs that we can compete at the top of our game. But overall, I think it's just being aware of the risks that we partake when we start these diets, and understanding the risks and how can we still reach overall health and overall performance.
It's good to know that, while it takes a bit more kind of focused effort for plant-based, that it's doable. And I feel like in hindsight, I group that into fad diets. But, for a lot of people, there's a lot of different reasons for going on a vegan plant-based. And so, I want to make sure that I'm not discrediting, whether it's environmental reasons, whether it's, treatment of animals. There's a lot of like legitimate reasons. So it's cool to know that there are ways that kind of athletes that can do that. It just takes a little bit more effort than, I guess, just eating a steak every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, there's so much information coming at us on Instagram, TikTok, like news feeds about nutrition, and so much of it is contradictory. So that was kind of really helpful to go through that and hear from you. But let's kind of simplify a few things for the athletes and coaches listening. If you could name a few or simplify some general guidelines for female athletes. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways to put together a healthy diet, but what do you think are some key things that you would tell female athletes to just focus on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my big ones, again, eating every 3 to 4 hours, because we want to make sure we're fueling our body appropriately, and that within those times that we're fueling, are we including a good source of carbohydrate? Are we including a source of protein for that, supporting the muscle maintenance? And then any bonus for colors that we're getting in. Again, we're going to meet a lot of our nutrient requirements that way. And I think focusing more on foods to include rather than foods to exclude. I think a lot of times, and I see it this way when people hear I'm a dietitian, it's like, oh, you're the food police. And I'm like, no, like I'm a dietitian because I love food. Like I wouldn't be in this profession if I didn't love food. Like, so, oftentimes we start to villainize certain foods or nutrients, but focusing on what you can include more in your diet, rather than what do I need to cut out. And I think that will take you a long way. And I think that will too just help you build a positive relationship with food, because as an athlete, you eat a lot of it, but life after sport, anyone who's just doing whatever day in and day out, you need food in your body. So I'm a big believer in creating that positive relationship with food.
I agree, like 100%, that focus of things to include versus exclude is so important. And I get asked these questions a lot from younger hockey players, and I probably shouldn't be asked some of these questions as I'm not a dietitian. But one of the things that I always say, like when it comes to like nutrition, because I don't want athletes to have a negative relationship with food. So I would say it's important to know that, it's fuel, but it's also like fun. It's also like how we socialize. It's all of these things in our lives. It's not just fuel. So I think that's really cool that you pointed that out. Okay, I have one last question. Hopefully we have enough time for this, but there's a lot of food out there that gets a bad rap. Is there a food that has a negative connotation to it, but is actually really good for performance?
Yes. Okay. I love this question. I have two foods that I want to, or nutrients, foods, whatever, to touch on. I think the first one is egg yolks. I think sometimes egg yolks get like such a negative view on it. And it's like, I need to have my egg whites, which is totally fine if just the flavor, you like your egg whites. But like egg yolks are just packed with nutrients. They have like half the protein of the egg. They have folate, iron, calcium, potassium, phosphorus. They have so many vitamins and minerals. But one thing they also have is cholesterol. And I think that scares some people. But for athletes in particular, cholesterol is really important in the muscle protein synthesis, like the science, reactions, everything that goes in there. So essentially you need cholesterol to help your body build muscle. So yes, have those egg yolks, have them all. So egg yolks is one. And the second one is caffeine or coffee. And I think this also, you hear, you hear that, coffee or caffeine in particular, like it dehydrates us. So we need to stay away from it, especially around performance. But there's really good research that shows that that caffeine can, one, have a stimulus effect. So it kind of, it enhances our aerobic capacity, even muscular endurance, strength, speed, power. So we were kind of getting that like a little bit of pop there too. But, people who are habitual caffeine drinkers, so if you're having a coffee every day, or maybe even every other day, continuing that if it's close to game time, close to performance time, is totally okay. It's not going to affect your urine output or dehydrate you because you're used to drinking it. Your body, your kidneys adapt to having that. So for those who never have caffeine, I would tend to caution them away from it around a competition if it's new to them. And then, of course, we want to be careful because caffeine can stimulate our gut motility. So it can make us go to the bathroom. And this usually peaks around 30 to 40 minutes after having it. So just making sure, you're kind of timing that. So it's not right when you're about to hit the start line for a race. So those are my two favorites, which I love because I had coffee this morning and I had egg yolks this morning. So
I love that. Okay, that is great news. And I think kind of a perfect way for us to wrap up this conversation, knowing that coffee is performance enhancing. It can't be bad for you. Time it properly, maybe not 10 minutes before you go.
yeah.
That's awesome. And I have a pregame coffee all the time. I've done it for years. And I think did it for taste and enjoyment, but knowing that it's also performance enhancing is kind of, so that's awesome. We covered a lot today. I really appreciate, having you on, Em, and I think you do a phenomenal job at kind of explaining these higher level science terms down to someone like myself, down to my level where I can understand it. I can use it. There's a lot of things that I wrote down that I can use as an athlete, but I think everyone listening, there's a lot of great pieces from, those topics that we covered today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. It was great to be here. So
yeah, this has been amazing, and the chemistry was on point. 91 points you combined for in 2012, 2013 at Cornell. That's I think this might even outdo that. This has been a fantastic display of sort of interdependence within the nutrition space, also within the performance space. So much information here. And Emily touched on, just to wrap this up a little further, like your first exposure not being to somebody in the nutrition space until getting to a national camp, and this being an opportunity to educate. And what an amazing job you've done here. To reiterate what Brianne said, I hope this is a lot of people's first exposure, and I hope a lot of people will reach out to you from this point moving forward. And if it's not your first exposure, then you got to dive right in here and continue with this stuff. Amazing. Part 2 of 3 women in sports. And before we go, at Fueled by Fulton, Emily, thank you so much for your time. This has been amazing. And Alex for being here and sharing mobility tape for her and your insight with that. And Brianne, you're about to fly out. So our overlap at Grit will be on pause for a little bit with Dan Noble and the squad over there. It's been a true pleasure. Wish you all the best. I'm sure we'll touch base before the actual competition, but just formally, good luck to you, your teammates, the coaching staff, the training staff, the dietitians, everybody who's involved with Hockey Canada and that amazing IHF championship coming up in May in Nova Scotia. Good luck. Stay safe. Be well. Again, thank you. Your job hosting this has been fantastic. So Brianne Jenner playing host won't be here next week because she is off to bigger and better things out on the East Coast. Emily, you're more than welcome to join the panel next week if you're available. Same time, same channel for part 3. Alex, you will be on here as part of the panel, sharing the beach volleyball side of things and your experience in sport. We look forward to that one. Again, that'll go next week. Part 3, the final part of this educational series, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here. Our next session will go Sunday night, session 68, First Star Let's Chat with pitching coach Vince Horsman. This has been amazing. I have pages and pages of notes. I'm going to go back and find a bunch of these resources as well. And that iron piece, I'm going to throw out the insert boxed name of cereal here and start tagging those vitamins with, vitamin C rich foods with iron. That's a big one. I think that first meal of the day where, for female athletes, certainly, and where iron's low and all of these things, and hepcidin, pronounced correctly, I think, based on my understanding of the English language, but some really amazing stuff. And the dialogue was great again. So formally, thank you so much, Brianne. This has been fantastic stepping in and then playing line mate here with Emily. And Emily, what a resource. So if you're willing and ready, people will reach out to you, hopefully based off this podcast, and fill your basket with a few more egg yolks and good things.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care. This has been part 2 of 3 Women in Sports First Star Let's Chat, brought to you by Mobility Tape for Her. Check them out at Mobility Tape for Her. Our guest host, Brianne Jenner, our guest of honor, Emily Fulton, and our product ambassador and friend, Alexandra Poletto, bringing you all of the information today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be in touch. Talk soon. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. Check us out online, firststartherapy.com. That's FIRSTAR therapy.com. Or email us with feedback, consult@firststartherapy.com, CONSULT@firststartherapy.com, on Instagram @firststar.therapy, and our podcast host @letschat.at. This is First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast.